It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Families Podcast. My name's Dr. Justin Coulson. So good of you to join us today as discussions intensify around implementing age restrictions for social media use, particularly the idea of raising the limit to 16 years of age. Experts continually warn that these measures are going to inadvertently, as much as we would like it to not be the case, shift the burden of responsibility onto parents rather than providing a comprehensive solution that will keep our kids safe, keep them offline until they're, even 16 is arguably not old enough, but let's just keep it there for now. Research shows that social media is having an impact on youth mental health in all of the weird nations of the world. Weird meaning Western educated, industrialised, rich and democratic. So we're talking about Australia, New Zealand, the US, the UK, Canada, North and West Europe, and a whole lot of other similar nations. We're seeing data that highlights that increasingly young people are experiencing challenges with mental health, and a key predictor of those challenges appears to be their time on social media. There was a Headspace report that found that 42% of young Australians cite social media as a key factor in their cognitive and psychological and social and emotional and even their physiological challenges. Matt Purcell is the founder of Social Kung Fu. Social Kung Fu is a world-first training program that's designed to empower youth with the communication skills and resilience they need to defend themselves against verbal abuse and a whole lot of other challenges that come with being online. And he joins me on the podcast today. Matt, great to be with you. Thanks for having a chat.
It's great being here. Thanks, Dr. Justin.
I want to talk to you shortly about Social Kung Fu and what you do there. I just love the name. I mean, what a great name for a company. But let me ask you this. You've spoken fairly consistently in what you do in this social media space about the challenges of enforcing age restrictions on social media platforms. This is a question that I get from parents endlessly, never-endingly. How do I keep the kids off, especially when all their friends are on there? And even if I have some sort of bans in my home, they just borrow their friends' devices and they use social media there. My question for you is, how can parents not just monitor, but be involved in the management of their children's social media use when there are so many obstacles to being able to do that effectively, and the online digital space keeps changing as well?
Yeah, I think we've really failed our kids in this area, Justin, in the sense of the government has pretty much, and social media platforms have given kids car keys to essentially drive social media at age 13 without, you think of the driver's learner's test, at least you're meant to pass some type of law, some type of test to know what the difference between safe driving and dangerous driving is. And then once you pass that with knowledge, and you've got to be viewed, the parent has to be ahead of the kid. So if we learn, that's the good parallel I've found here is where parents are a lot behind the eight ball because the kids are running rings around them because we haven't really, as a nation or West, all been our literacy is not the same with things. So we don't know what's right or wrong. So I do think the right step in the right direction is for restrictions to be placed into hopefully into Australia at 16 minimally. And it will just give parents a good reset, a chance to reset their values, readdress that, the government's enforced this now. We have to relook at a few of the devices and things like that. I think parents would love a chance to go back in time and push reset on what they could do. But one of the things I've been really encouraging parents to do is to form alliances with other families that have a similar value in their household of maybe a no social media zone or limited screen time in their families. I do that with my family. I have a Facebook group of people who actually say, we're families that don't have social media up to this certain age, so that it doesn't create this fear of missing out, a fear of being left out in the kids. They've got friends and families have friends also to create this type of relationship there. So there's no bullying happening because you're not on it.
Yeah, it's there are a couple of things that strike me as you speak there, Matt. First of all, that idea of the keys. I typically extend that metaphor a little further and just say, I don't know if every state has this for cars, but I'm pretty sure it is the case with motorcycles. You get a motorcycle license at whatever age, and you're on your L's or your P's or whatever, and there are very clear restrictions. Just because you pass the test, just because you got the license, doesn't mean it's open slather, it's carte blanche, and you can jump on the big 1100cc Ducati and go wherever you want and do whatever you want. They usually restrict young riders to a 250cc motorcycle for the first year of their riding, so that they can get their experience and learn how to do it safely. And this idea that you're 13 now, here's the keys, jump on the computer, social media is all yours. I think it's just, what
kind of results, Justin, were we ever expecting other than car crashes online?
Yeah.
Cyberbullying, you got phishing, you got imposters, you got people posing as other people, group chats. It is completely like giving a 12-year-old keys.
Yeah.
To something. You're right. Like, restrictions are a really important. It's a really important thing to place on new people with any dangerous, potentially harmful thing, because restrictions look at doing two things. One is balancing giving youth independence, but also keeping others safe. And that's the two things we have to balance here. What age is appropriate to be able to give them independence, but also protect others from harming others. So I do think it's been debated I think it's been pretty much agreed upon in most countries, actually, Justin. 16, 17, 18, there's a couple of years difference across the West in agreement on when a kid can drive but the age different for drinking is different. So I think this is one thing that would help move the needle a little bit forward.
There are platforms that are beginning to take some steps to create safer environments for younger users, usually because of pressure from grassroots activism, from parents who are, as you said, getting together and forming alliances. I love the Heads Up Alliance that just does great work and says exactly what you're saying, right? Let's band together as parents and work on this. I have a website called unpluggedchildhood.org that says exactly the same thing. Delay giving your kids devices, form these alliances so the kids have got families that you can trust, that they can spend time with, and then when the time comes, move slowly. But what I want to know from you is, without any governmental or bottom-up pressure, are social media companies going to change? Part one. And then part two, what changes could they make from your perspective to create healthy engagement, healthy use of their platforms?
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about this, actually. I don't think social medias do, pardon the French, shit all, really, to be able to make their platform safer, a safe place for particularly young people. An example of that is you got to look at intent-based marketing and non-intent-based marketing. The difference is simply this. When I search for something on the internet, that's intent-based marketing. I'm looking for it. So that's on the user. So if we use the analogy of driving a car, there's driver user issues and there's manufacturer issues on the car to make it safe. So that's on me and how I use this device. We choose to log in and stuff. But at the same time, there's non-intent-based marketing, which is I'm not looking for this type of thing at all. It's popping up in my feed. That's definitely on the social media platforms. Why are extremist types of content being shown to young people is beyond me. So the algorithm is within the platform's ability, and that needs to be questioned maybe by third-party platform on how that is done. Usually how social media like to operate is based on engagement. So this is what creates this issue of echo chambers, where if you engage Justin in, say, a topic, say you like sport, as harmless as sport, the algorithm is set up to say, okay, we'll feed Justin more sport. That's great. But then algorithm feeds you something you haven't searched for, but you might spend some time on it. It might be some political thing or extremist thing or sexual thing even, or it might be not age appropriate for kids. If they spend 3 to 4 to 5 seconds on that, longer than a usual post, they'll just keep feeding that. So that's where I really want social media to be held accountable for is, are they, as a manufacturer, say as a car, creating the best safety features? And if bullying was happening on my platforms, I'd be doing everything in my power to educate, to be able to use AI or whatever I can to monitor what's happening, to be able to flag better things, or use the curation, even the algorithm to force feed educational, like anti-bullying tactics or self-well-being, science-backed, proven tactics to young people on there. That's what the power of social media could be. These platforms could be educating the people a lot more than just feeding, people who are paying them the most.
Right. And alarm and outrage create the engagement. So we've got kids who are filming fights in the schoolyard, provoking other people so that they can get the reaction, so that they can post it online, so they can get the popularity, they can get the likes, they can get the status. We've got kids who are feeling awful about themselves and they're being fed pro-anorexia content, or they're being... we've got whistleblower content. We've actually got data here, whistleblower evidence that shows that they're being fed a diet of... I'm not even going to say it on the podcast, just stuff that will only exacerbate mental health challenges. Yeah. Matt Purcell from Social Kung Fu. You have a Social Kung Fu program. I'm curious to hear about it. This conversation is pretty much the first time I've heard of you and what you do. My understanding of Social Kung Fu is that you try to help young people with communication skills and resilience. Tell me a bit more about what you're doing as an organization to make a difference in what is a very, very challenging environment.
Yeah, well, those who are just listening to the podcast, if this is an audio podcast, they won't see that I'm actually Asian. So I'm Korean hardware. So I'm Korean hardware and Aussie software.
Gotcha.
And I was adopted as a kid, and everything was cool until my parents split when I was 6. And that same year, I went on to a new school bus and to a new school, and was picked on by several year 7 students, verbally abused and physically abused for months.
So they're 12 or 13 and you're 6, and they're giving it to you because you're Asian?
Yeah, because I'm Asian. I was the only Asian kid in my school and on that school bus.
Wow.
And I was defenseless, and I held that secret until my mum found out. And when they found out, the school did their thing, which didn't really deal with. I've very much discovered very early on in my life that I was on my own. Like the school, my mum can't come on the bus, my dad can't come, the teachers aren't going to do it. There needs to be evidence, and there needs to be some type of skill. That there was a skill in me that wasn't there just by hoping that someone would help me. Like I needed to figure it out. So my dad put me in martial arts lessons, in kung fu lessons, karate lessons, and it resulted in me turning violent and defending myself against bullying. First of all, it started self-defense, and then I turned into a bully because I was so hurt. And I went through a lot of therapy and a lot of counseling as a kid, and came out the other side very, very, very well. And now I help students deal with the same issue. Because if you look at the research, the most common form of abuse in the West isn't kicks or punches. It's actually verbal abuse. And verbal abuse, we've got Krav Maga, we've got boxing, we've got UFC, we've got all these forms of physical self-defense codes. But what comes with words, texting and talking, which is majority of what gets us in trouble. Words get you hired, they get you fired, they get you divorced, they get you dates, they can create war, they can create peace. There's lots of forms of communication skills, but there's no uniforms, curated, evidence-based program that I could find that help young people deal with the cyber attacks, verbal attacks in person and online. And that's why I created Social Kung Fu. I have over 10 years of experience as an NDIS provider back in the day. Helped 600 families a week through youth camps, music lessons, tutoring, and had a youth center with 50 plus staff. And I saw firsthand the damage of cyberbullying when it was arising in 2014 plus. And that's when I created Social Kung Fu. It's a verbal self-defense black belt for young kids to be able to defend themselves and their worth with their thumbs and their tongues.
Without having to get violent.
Without having to get to that point. If you have to, you have to, but we can de-escalate things. We can deflect. We can do so much with our words. I say in Social Kung Fu, words create worlds.
Matt, really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Social Kung Fu is the name of the organization. I have 2 more questions that I'd like to run by you just as we move things to a conclusion. We talked a fair bit about how the social media companies, it's not in their interest to make any changes that are going to reduce engagement. The algorithm being inflammatory and incendiary is in their interest, and attention is the currency of the domain. The more attention they've got, the more engagement there is, the more engagement there is, the more advertising there is, the more revenue there is, the more shareholder value increases, the more the market capitalization goes up. The onus really is on parents, and too many parents are just struggling and throwing up their arms and saying, I just don't know what to do here. If we were to extend this conversation into sort of a nice, neat bundle and look for like a 30 or 40 second wrap up what would you say is the ideal role of an Australian government who is almost powerless relative to the US, basically because that's where the companies are? What's the ideal role of the Australian government and social media companies when it comes to making online safer for our kids?
I think if the government and the social media platforms can work together to create a literacy program, which will help, because I know a lot of parents that just are so far behind. The kids run rings around them. They wouldn't know where to start. Parents need equipping. They need education. They need to be a user of these platforms. And I think that could be a really good start, back to the driver's knowledge test situation. The reason why there's a parent in the car next to the kid as they're driving, it's because that parent knows more than that kid. And the skill level is not just level, they know. So I think there needs to be something there. But I do think that the onus just needs to be on, listen, we're the ones who give devices. Parents, the responsibility is on you to be able to say, okay, you provide the opportunity to be able to be on it. So you've got to manage it in your house. Treat every single device that has access to the internet as if it's a family device, not just a child's device. I can't tell you, Justin, how many parents give a phone for Christmas, an iPad at Christmas to their children, and the children says, it's mine. Well, I think you should rein it in and treat it as if it was a work device. So we've got company devices that gifted to you to be not to abuse it, or you'll lose it. Like, you've got to use that.
And every company has a very clear policy around what can be done and what can't be done on that device. If you do the wrong thing on that device and the company finds out, you will not just lose the device, you'll lose your job, right? I mean, there are very clear guidelines around how these devices are to be used and what for.
There needs to be a less formal version of this, like a code of conduct in the house. I mean, and you put it on the bloody fridge. Talk about it at dinner and lunch and breakfast until it actually seeps in. That, like, based on social media reports, based on, I think it was one of the UK university reports from 2023, upwards of 3 hours a day has correlations with increased anxiety and depression. So we can use some true data to suggest if you're on your social media devices more than X amount of hours, say an hour a day, then that's going to equal, you're going to most likely feel down, you're going to feel no energized, and we're not going to have life together as a family. As a mum and dad, I want us to be able to be together rather than be on our screens. So you're going to hate me till you're old enough to make your own choices, but this is what's going to happen. And I think parents, I know this, I can speak from experience here, Justin, having helped 600 families a week with my old my youth center. Parents need to step up again and risk being hated for a period of time. There might be property damage. I've seen kids go, oh, I hate this change. You know, they've like rebelled and it's acted out. And you need to hold strong. It's like in other areas of your life, you wouldn't let your daughter or your son just go and hang out someone's house that you wouldn't know at strangers and stuff like that. You've got to hold yourself to the same standards you would for other values you have. But this phone, unmanned, is going to kill your kids.
So the advice that I picked up as we've gone through this conversation is fairly consistent with the things that I share with families. That is that the devices, even if you give them to the kids, still remain family property. You've also highlighted the importance of having a parental alliance within the community. And the other thing that has come through many, many, many times is just the importance of having appropriate limits for your kids. Matt, really appreciate you sharing what you have on the Happy Families podcast. If people want to find out more about social kung fu, where can they go?
Head to socialkungfu.com.au. There's a book that I'm writing right now with a lawyer, some clinical psychologists, and special needs specialists, and it's going to be the most conclusive free book. We're going to release this for free for any parent that's got their kids being bullied in school right now, especially knowing your rights for if your kid is being bullied, so that your school doesn't ignore you. We've had so many, unfortunately, at least 2 or 3 media known suicides this year. Sammy Tersh, who was 10, he took his own life because he was picked on by his teeth and for his glasses on school buses for years. And his parents rang the school up 30 times and the school didn't count that as any report. We've got others, and it's awful what's happening. So we need to help give parents power back as much as we can. So keep an eye out. That's going to come out early 2025 for free.
All right. Beautiful stuff. Love the generosity. Matt Purcell from Social Kung Fu. We will link to Social Kung Fu in the show notes. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks, Justin.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Ruan from Bridge Media. Check out the show notes and have a look at what Social Kung Fu offers. These conversations matter so very much. If you'd like more information about making your family happier, we'd love for you to visit our social media platforms, ironically, on Facebook and Instagram. And you can find a whole lot more at happyfamilies.com.au.